So we stopped on when you told your connection with the Enneagram, with Oscar Ichaza, and with the and you've been kicked out from Gurdjieff group. So I'm interested in how you integrate all these flows in yourself.
For me, Gurdjieff was a living example of a principle that real masters exist. A mastery of a kind that goes much beyond what we in the West expect from a psychotherapist or a psychologist or somebody that helps you with your mind. It opened me to the possible existence of guides, and I was always looking for another Gurdjieff, or for something like personal contact with a teacher of the Gurdjieff kind. And that I thought I found in Fritz Perls to some extent. He spoke a very different language, but he was a very powerful confronter. He was very truthful. It's like the sword of truth. There was some Gurdjieffian quality to Fritz Perls, and I related to Fritz Perls as a teacher much beyond most people who related to him as a therapist. I gave him credit for being something like the equivalent of a Zen master, somebody who had gone through a profound awakening. And I think that is what made me a living inheritor. I'm seen by many people today as the most relevant Gestalt therapist. And I have Gestalt therapy schools all over the world that are, while the traditional schools are coming down and losing people and reputation, my schools are beginning to prosper. I think that came from a kind of relationship with Fritz Perls that had echoes of Gurdjieff in him. And then this culminated in my finding a Tibetan teacher. That came later in life, after the Ichazo episode, which was short in my life. He sent me to the desert for a retreat that was very transformative, just as he had promised that it would be. And I was very cynical about his promise. I would say, how can anybody promise enlightenment? But I did undergo an enlightenment, a transitory enlightenment, an enlightenment that lasted for 3 years. And I see much later in life, reading the life of mystics, I see that happens, that it's quite not uncommon for a breakthrough, even in Japanese Zen masters, that is lost to becomes Zen sickness, as it's called, or something like equivalent to the dark night of the soul.
What do you call enlightenment in this case?
It was several stages. I have written an autobiography that I haven't published yet, and I speak of it as the Mount Sinai of my life, as if there was always a desire to go up, 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 up in consciousness, and something like a supreme consciousness that doesn't last so much, because then there is a descent of the holy mountain, and there is, according to the biblical parable, 40 years in the desert. There's a dryness, as having been in heaven and having lost it. And yet, it's a living process in which one thing is as necessary as the other. The highest point of enlightenment was just being in a sacred space where there's nothing to say, where energy flows in the body, very much like Carlos Castaneda describes the light flow in the body, and there were some spontaneous movements, as if it constant dance, and all this was like the building up of an embryo, but of an embryo that not of the physical, but as if of a ethereal body, let's say, and but mostly as if I were in the womb of some divine entity that is forming me, taking care of me. While I do nothing, it forms me, it builds me up.
And it's how long it continue?
I was 40 days in the desert.
Just alone or with someone?
No, alone.
Alone? And Oscar told you that you will get enlightenment if you stay 40 days?
Yes. And I didn't know, I asked him, how do I know that you will know by the fruit? And it was so that I at the end, I was satisfied. I had a very high experience, but little by little, the power of that contact got more and more diluted. It lasted more or less 3 years, during which I did my early teaching. And this early teaching became Sat Institute. At the beginning, there was no program. I was just somebody very inspired. And I had some gift to see what was happening in other people too. I had more abilities. So it's as if I had become a little bit like a medium or an inner directed person who capacities beyond my usual capacities. But little by little, in the course of 3 years, I felt I had come back to more or less usual. And I closed my school, my Arika group, my Sat group in Berkeley, because I feel I needed to take more care of myself. I was not at the high point anymore. And it came back very gradually. And there was a time in Spain, 10 years later, when I got a request to teach a group of psychotherapists, and I thought I would do the same thing that I had offered in America, but now not out of inspiration, but out of the resources I had amassed and the techniques that I had created, and the program I had designed. And I did this, and I did it now more or less feeling like an ordinary human being, talking about from experience, out of experience, rather than out of inspiration. And I got a lot of gratefulness from the people, and I was in a more personal contact with people, not from the top of the mountain down as a hierophant, but more as an ordinary human being. And I started to feel the gratefulness for what I did, for what resulted from this, made me feel kind of Santa Claus, which was an antidote for my feeling throughout all life. I had felt never enough, not sufficient, not enough prepared. And I started to feel like I am a generous person. I can give. And there came to a moment when I was more complete than when I started. I started. Sat was reborn in Spain, and then it went to Brazil, it went to Italy, it went to other countries, even Australia for a while. It started spreading, and I was growing and growing little by little in doing it, as if carrying other people into their more mature potential helped me. And I still feel I feel I'm coming to the end of that. Like now it's like I'm a tree. Like my fruit is completely ripe when it's juicy and tastes good.
Yeah.
I feel I'm coming to the end of a cycle. What started in that desert retreat with Ichazo.
Okay.
But most of the way I have been helped by the presence and the advice of this Tibetan teacher, Tартанг Тулку.
And what's happened finally with Ichazo?
I don't know. I haven't had contact with him, and it seemed to me as if it was not meant that I had continued to be in contact. He did something like, "Go your way now." His final words were that he manipulated the group to make me go away. It was almost an expulsion. But he would tell me that's their karma, and they will have to deal with that. But you don't be worried by that. Your way, you will be an important way. You will be an important person in the world to come. And I believed he said it in good faith. He was a person with many roles and would say one thing to one person, another to the other. He contradicted himself, so many people thought he was a great liar, and that they tried to present me as being too naive and trusting so much in him. John Lilly even created an expression to do a Claudio, meaning to be so naive with his teacher, Ichazo, that he doesn't see what a manipulator he is.
And from your point of view, he was not like guru, like Gurdjieff style, what you...
I think he was a different style.
Different style.
He was much more devious. But I once asked him about that. I am used to people who are straightforward, like Gurdjieff and like Pearls. And but I see that you are very manipulative. Both are okay, he says. It was a very simple answer to the question. Both are valid.
Okay. And do you have a map of consciousness you are using, or like in another way of questioning, in a sad system or somewhere else, do you have enlightenment as a point for to help people to reach or something?
Yes and no. I share many of the ideas of Buddhist psychology. I share some of Gurdjieff, but with some differences. I have formed my own map, but I cannot say I have systematized everything. When I present exercises to do as parts of the program, I generally describe these exercises with some theory thrown in, almost camouflaged, so it doesn't seem to be a theoretical thing, but part of the methodology. I would say that I transmit a lot of a vision of things. There is this statement in the Bible, not only by bread does man live, but by the word of God. And I think it's true that there is something like philosophical therapy. If you see things right, if what you hear is not the word of God in the metaphorical sense of a God who knows the truth and is represented by one emissary, but if enlightened vision, clarity, hearing things that make sense, does a lot to make you feel, to contextualize things better. I think a lot of what I do lately in life, I don't do so much therapy anymore. I do sort of informally when I deal with people in a group. But I put out a lot of vision which I have not undertaken to systematize.
And do you have a world view, like you mentioned in our talk that music is objective? So do you have a kind of ontology, like what is objective reality, is it existing or not? So how will you?
I have beliefs that I hesitate to put out as truths because I don't see myself as having come to the end of my way. I have had so many teachings, not only from the teachers I mentioned, but from every spiritual tradition. I was a student of a successor of the last Taoist patriarch, for instance. I was a student of Muktananda, who was one of the most miraculous of the Indian teachers at the time. I have absorbed a lot. So I have opinions, opinions of a widely traveled traveler. But I don't emphasize so much that in what I speak, in what I present. I do emphasize that everything in the world of mental phenomena, thinking, feeling, willing, wishing, and all of these are not as substantial as the mind itself. That the actions of the mind, the mental phenomena, exist in a mental space of mind as such, and the mind in itself is something about which you cannot say anything. It's a little bit as if it were nothing, but it's a nothing that it contains everything. We are a nothingness that contains all our experience, and I think enlightenment has to do, or wisdom has to do with understanding that nothingness, but not, of course, with the intellectual mind that cannot understand it, but by becoming it. By becoming nothing, we become the container of everything, and we can enjoy things, of course, like miraculous gifts.
And the Tibetan Buddhism is the closest to what you was.
Yes, but I cannot say I identify 100% in spite of that. My teacher tells me I am come to this world to present a different teaching. And my teacher, I always felt nothing next to him, as if he can have me in the palm of his hand, because he's so clairvoyant. He knows so much what goes on in me without my need to tell him. He's a great shaman, like Tibetans are. But only last time I saw him, he gave me, when I saying goodbye, a yellow kata, a yellow scarf, and I asked his wife, and said he gave me a white one first, and then orange one, and in the passing of the years has given me scarves of very different colors. There was a blue one, there was a red one. What's the yellow one? Oh, that's given only to very great teachers. So there's a moment in my development where he, some years ago, saw that I was, he gave me the mantle of a Tibetan yogi, as if I've come to the fruition stage of the path. But now it's more as if I have come to a mission. And but I don't remember any previous lifetime. And he says he knows me from previous lifetimes, that he has a relationship with me from previous lifetimes. And begins to talk about me as having come for a purpose, as if turning around, because he was always like stimulating me by putting me down. Oh, you try to change the world, and you first have to produce some bodhisattvas, or say, train people who have come to that level. And now, for the first time, he tells me, but now you have done it already. What you have put out in the world will work. It's you don't have it. You now can rest and take care of yourself.
Is he alive right now?
Yes.
Yes.
He's alive, but he's not in circulation. He has built a monastery in Northern California that very few people have entered, but many people work for him there, publishing books. There are thousands of books that are given to Tibetans every year to keep them in different countries of the world in their schools, and builds, replicates the classics of Buddhist art. It's like preserving the Tibetan heritage. That's a kind of chosen task.
Where is Northern California?
Casadero.
Casadero, it's just where we are.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, look him up.
Thank you very much.
Sì, sì.